You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Stefan Berger.
Hey Rob, how's it going?
Dude, I'm like I just said to you before, the burger shop thing. I'm telling you, you got to get that opened.
Yeah, I know you got to use everything to your advantage, right?
So, what exactly are you interested in? I've been trying to change up the beginning question from what you do professionally to what do you like?
Okay, wow, that's a pretty broad topic for me, I guess. You know, I'm someone who's worked in a whole heap of different areas, anything from engineering to health and now in tourism. But yeah, I'm a really big fan of the life sciences in general, anything to do with health, even like human anatomy and physiology, psychology, which is my
You just hit a major one for me, psychology for sure.
right. Yeah, that's a huge one for me actually, and I took quite a lot of psychology subjects in my university degree in applied sciences, and yeah, they were always my favorites as well as anatomy. Yeah.
What is your favorite thing about psychology? Like, what things are you really kind of fascinated about? I'm always fascinated with the human mind on so many things that go into its environmental influences and what impacts a person's lifestyle when they grow up, and kind of things they pull out that things from they were kind of dealing with as a child.
Wow. Yeah, that's all really heavy and deep stuff, and I love it. I'm always looking for new, psychology stuff to read, and
Well, it's
I,
like
I love the
you're a
old.
you're a cactus explorer, man. It's like you grow up around cactuses or something. Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, so my interest in cacti specifically started when I was a kid, quite a young kid actually, because my grandparents had a really massive landscape garden. My grandfather just had a small cactus garden, but it was always my favorite part of their display. And so, yeah, when he became ill, I ended up inheriting that cactus collection, and then my family bought me this cactus encyclopedia and used to keep articles from gardening magazines and stuff like that. And then I started buying more cacti, and it just kind of grew from there and turned into a bit of an obsession.
Like, see, we're talking about environmental influences. Like, that was something that influenced when you were a child, bringing up until now you're fascinated with it as you got older. I found that I was
Yeah.
lightly brought into the realm of like ancient history. And I find as I'm getting older, like I'm really fascinated with Greek mythology, types of Roman and types of literature that are from the olden days, back when like we fought with swords instead of fighting with guns.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. That's so awesome. Yeah. And, I think my interest in cacti actually wavered a bit, especially in my later teens. Um, and it wasn't sort of until probably my mid 20s again when my interest really kind of sparked up again, and I was really motivated to travel to habitat and see cacti in habitat. So, yeah, I think that happens with a lot of people. Sometimes something sparks your interest again in your adult years that you were something you were interested in your childhood.
It seems like the things that we think are like just small little imprints into our life, like such as like, oh, I like to play board games, and the person spends their whole life like doing all these office jobs and everything to end up owning a board game company. It's like, oh, did you like you totally glossed over the major hint where you found that key to success right in the beginning. And I mean, if you look at cactuses, they're just like a lot of people. Like, I know that makes some stupid sense, but rough exterior and then a really kind of weird interior, that's basically what people are. We have this prickly outside where we're afraid to let anybody get near us. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
this thing adds up their defenses, and then you end up slicing off their head and there's a soft inside.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's such a good way to you know to describe people, isn't it? Defense mechanisms, spiky, spiky thorns, and um, spines and, irritating sap and all kinds of stuff that you get on. Well, now I'm talking about euphorbias and stuff, but which are plants that kind of resemble cacti. But, a lot of plants in general have got their own defense mechanisms, but cacti are really obvious. And
Well, cacti just has that look like the big guy at the bar with all the muscles and has like tattoos all over. It's like, just stay away from me. It's just better if you just stay out of my area. Like, just trying to put your hands on me, you're going to end up getting like hurt.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, like a lot of people don't like cacti, I suppose, for that reason. They're like, they're prickly, I don't want them around my house or my garden or anything like that. But a lot of people are really drawn to them, as well.
They look badass, man. I'm going to ask you the same thing about your kind of cactus experiences, as well as like, I only have a small experience of cactuses. Mostly I went to Las Vegas, Nevada. And we're taking a trip all around through, I guess, Arizona, or not Arizona. What's right next to Nevada? Oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking on this.
Yeah, Arizona, Utah, California. It's sort of how's my geography on the states?
Dude, I'm lucky if I know where Canada is. I think it's like right above America. That's all I know. But in Italy, shaped like a boot. I was heard at that one at one point. But we went on a road trip to go see the Grand Canyon. And as we're driving through, it's about a 2.5-hour ride from where we were picked up from the bus station in Vegas. And we're riding around and, going through the desert. And there's nothing but like sand and cactuses. And it was so interesting to see the variations of cactuses too. And I mean, my only experience of seeing really one up close was like from Nacho Libre, when the dude sliced off the head of a cactus and starts taking out the nutrients inside of it. I'm like, all right, I know that cactuses store water, but they grow in some really crazy environments. I mean, they're really cool to look at too. Like if I was going to own like an El Chapo style house or something where I would probably be selling mounds and mounds of cocaine, I would definitely have cactuses all up around it.
Oh yeah. I mean, they really set off any kind of landscape like that, any rock garden, any kind of adobe kind of style building, working in with those really earthy colors, like, classical Mexican scenes, they've got those really earthy colors painted on all the buildings and houses, and cacti, that sets a really great backdrop for cacti, So that's why they've become really popular as well, especially with, I don't know, the drying climate and stuff like that. People are starting to lean towards more drought tolerant gardens and xeriscape stuff and things like that. It's really cool. Yeah.
Now, what exactly is your most memorable cactus experience? Like, is it something that came from kind of your just, I guess, start with it with kind of your family getting you interested into it?
Yeah. My earliest experience. Yeah.
Well, just your most memorable one that
most
you really
memorable one.
Yeah. Did you end up like jumping into a cactus pit or something? And that would be memorable to me. I remember my buddy used to play a game where you throw a cactus at somebody and be like, think fast. And then you end up catching it. And you're like, ow.
I mean, I had a couple moments like that, but they were probably a bit later on. Actually, I had to get a cactus spine surgically removed from in between one of my knuckles. I was actually like weeding in the garden, and it was quite overgrown at that time. And I just dove in to like pull out this weed and didn't realize there was a cactus underneath it and kind of like punched it, and it just went straight in between my knuckles.
Pictured you walking out into a cactus garden with like Rocky Balboa, like tape around your knuckles, just beating the living crap out of like cactus. Like, you ever seen those videos of people training by punching a wall or something, and you're just out there fighting cactus? It's like, what's Stefan doing? It's like, oh, he's out there fighting cactuses right now, and you're just out there just beating the crap out.
Yeah, I don't know how thick a callus you need to build up to defend yourself against spines, but yeah, I don't know if it works like that with cacti. Actually, I've had thorns go through boots and all kinds of stuff that you just wouldn't think it would be possible. But yeah, crazy. But yeah, when I was like a really young kid, like I don't know, maybe even like 6 or 7 years old, I still remember like yeah, having dinosaurs in the cactus garden, like I had this, like, I don't know, I guess dinosaur set of toys or something, and I used to like put them out in the cactus garden and stuff like that. And I remember just, yeah, thinking that was pretty awesome. I don't know, there's some connection between the two, but I don't even know if cacti were around,
Well, how did you like decide to even get interested? Like, what's the most interesting thing you find about just understanding cactuses in general? Like, that's a really weird area to kind of study and first of all explore. As much as interesting they are, but what have you typically found that really hooked your interest? I mean, just going from human anatomy and psychology to diving into this, like, that's a big leap.
Mm, I think, yeah, I mean, they just look awesome. I was always just fascinated with, I mean, there's over 2,000 different species of cacti. And like you were saying before, they're all so different. You can get these tiny little geophytes, like ones that actually live below the ground almost. And then these huge, big, tall monsters, and I was always interested as to how they could be part of the same family of plants, and yeah, that really got me into adaptations as well. Like, to anything that can survive in a place that receives really minimal rain. I think the evolutionary adaptations that have gone into that is really interesting. Because when I learned anatomy, I guess I still remember my anatomy teacher telling me, the structure reflects function. And that rule goes for almost anything that's living. The human body, the way the structure of it is, in the design of how we actually use our bodies, but it's also in the same with plants, how the structure of them and how they're designed reflects usually, yeah, their survival mechanisms, their environment, and all of those kind of things. And
Well, it's
yeah, I think,
surprisingly similar is the area that, like, if we look at plants in general, we can split up all the classifications and kingdoms between like animal kingdom, and there's the
right.
bacteria, there's plants, there's all these types of things. But when we look at the plant kingdom, plants can grow in the weirdest types of ways and environments too. Like certain plants grow only in moist conditions, certain plants can only grow
Mm,
in dry conditions, such as a cactus, for
right.
instance. An area where a cactus grows, I mean, this is all my information is coming straight out of Viva Pinata, a video game that I used to play when I was a kid. Like, you put a patch of sand on the ground, you can grow a cactus on top of it. Like, it was that, you know what I mean? It was the weirdest thing. Like, it's like a weed. They grow in environments that can be super, super harsh where a lot of plants really can't thrive. Cactus learns
Right.
to suck up the nutrients and stuff around the soil, if I'm correct, and kind of store it into itself. That's why a lot of them hold liquids.
Right. Yeah, and yeah, it's right into the evolution. Like the cells of a cactus are much larger than any other plant. So when they do get hydrated, that just takes them a lot longer to become dehydrated. Many other plants have got really small, tiny cells, but they dehydrate really quickly, and yeah, stuff like that.
Well,
Yeah.
how'd you decide to get this into touring? Like, are people just looking to explore the wasteland or like the kind of the environment around, or are they exploring more on the lines of cactuses? Because I think they get stigmatized pretty bad. They're mostly told throughout society and throughout the world, like, hey, cactuses aren't good. Stay away from them. They are bad looking. They're evil looking. I'm like, yeah, but do you understand how they grow? Like, it's not a healthy environment for a lot of things. It's like if you look at Greek mythology in the movie like Wrath of the Titans or something, Hades lived off the fear of people, and he was way weaker and way darker than everybody. He
Mm,
was all about hate and all this type of stuff. I'm like, you're not going to benefit from growing in a bad environment, so why would you end up thinking the thing's going to look nice and cuddly? A cactus is the complete opposite.
yeah. Well, I think underneath all of those spines, they're usually quite soft bodied, a lot of them too, because they deal with expansion and absorption. So if you kind of imagine it without spines, it would look really quite different too. Or some cacti are short spines as well. But yeah, I think in general, people, a lot of people have probably heard of the colloquial name is prickly pear, Opuntia. It's a genre or a genus of cactus, I should say. And so there's a few species in that genus that are actually classified as noxious weeds. And in Australia, for example, there was a huge problem with them overtaking thousands of square kilometers or miles, if you will, of land. It was just crazy. They were out of control. And so that kind of got conveyed obviously into the media. And so people who didn't know much about cacti were like, oh, this is a cactus. It's like an invasive, noxious weed. It's, bad for the environment and all that kind of thing. But it's really only just a couple of species amongst, thousands. So I think they can sort of get a bad rap from, various different.
Yeah, the only good publicity I've ever seen with a cactus is being involved in the Western movies. Like, that's everything. That and a tumbleweed is probably the two basic functions that make a Western movie. It's
right.
They do get stigmatized, but a lot of them are really, really beautiful. Like the flowers that grow on them. I don't think a lot of people understand that the basic cactus that you see in Breaking Bad, the thing that looks like a person with their arms kind of like L's, like one's upside down and the other one's right side up. It's like, that's not always all the cactuses. A lot of them hold like beautiful flowers on the ends of them. They're really kind of amazements of beauty too, to be able to. I mean, it's a perfect representation for life if you want to get deep about it. You look at a cactus, it's like, I'm not trying to pull out like a God moment out of a cactus, but it's like, shit, this thing tried its ass off to grow into something, and it actually bloomed into something beautiful.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I find really fascinating too. And, I love cacti flowers, and a lot of them only last for one day, which is something pretty, unique, I guess, and so some people also kind of like, oh, why would you grow a plant and wait an entire year just to see a flower for one day? But for me, that's kind of something really special about them too. But yeah, the flowers are just magnificent, really.
Can you imagine putting in all that work and then your flower, after years and years of growing something, only lasts one day, but it's like such beauty? Like,
yeah.
Holy crap, man. That's like a pineapple. Like, I found out a pineapple to grow takes 48 months, and like you eat it in like 5 minutes. It's like, damn, all that work, but it's so fucking worth it.
Yeah, and that's just it, I think that's something pretty special as well. But I mean, there's a whole cult or like subculture, if you will, of people who grow and collect cacti, and even
cult of cactus growers.
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of people are surprised to hear it. It's a real niche thing, there's a niche for everything, but I'll tell you that cacti and succulents, it's actually a pretty huge one. Well, especially when you start getting involved in the world of it, you realize how many people out there have the same interest as you. And
you just created a new hashtag. Instead of cannabis community, we're going to call it cacti community.
Yeah, it's seriously a thing. There'd probably already be a hashtag out there for it, I swear. Like
cactus culture, bitch.
Oh yeah, no, there's going to be hashtags. You'll be searching, you'll be surprised to see what's there and how many people are probably already using stuff like that. Because even in Australia, I think there are maybe, how many cacti and succulent societies? I think there's probably about 5. Just within Australia, most major cities actually have a cactus and succulent society, and people are just like, whoa, bang it, beep, 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 nerd alert,
when we talk about even the interest in cactus in general, it all depends on your location as well. Somewhere in Australia where cactus are common to grow, maybe like Nevada or something, like they're only really seen there, but for the rest of the world, they're stigmatized as these things that we do to hurt ourselves in funny videos or something. Like, there's a video of a kid that lays a bunch of cactuses down onto like one of those foldable tables, and he jumps off of like his porch onto the cactus and starts hurting himself. That's everybody's intake of most of America when it comes to cactuses, are these things that you do as stupid dares or challenges to hurt somebody. But really,
people
they're
eating cacti.
Yeah, it's like, but there's really this super interesting thing about them.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm just fascinated. I'm always, as much as I've actually, read and studied and even gone to Habitat and seen them, like, I'm still always learning something new about them, It's just fascinating how, when you really get in depth into a topic, how interesting it can be. Yeah.
Well, what are some interesting things you found out just with some of your research that you usually maybe try and tell somebody onto a tour? I mean, you're giving people tours. You're not just like, there's a cactus, there's this. Like, you got to be giving them some information, because I mean, even though as interesting as it might seem to be able to take a picture of a cactus, it's like, I would like to know some of the maybe things that you find interesting, kind of factual wise.
Right. So the fascinating thing about being in Chile, especially, is, well, we have the Atacama Desert, which is the driest desert in the world, and so you can only get rainfall here maybe every 4 to 7 years, depending on the El Nino events that occur here. So along the coastline, you get this really heavy, dense fog that comes in, just kind of like you get in California off the Pacific Ocean. And so this is really life-sustaining for any plants and cacti that live along the coast here. And so with any cactus, it's really adapted to its environment, and the structure of that cactus, and even down to its physiology, sometimes reflects the environment, So it's really interesting to sit there and look at the plant, that's evolved there for millions of years, and thinking, okay, well, what structural components of the cactus are interacting with the environment here that's helping it to live, So,
well, such as if you start looking at an area where there's probably a large amount of cactus, there probably is a lot drier ground closer to those cactuses, only because of the amount of probably nutrition or kind of, I guess, water it probably soaks up through the dirt. I mean, it's trying to find every little bit of it and store it inside of its thing. It's like a camel's hump.
You can see that. So a lot of cacti, for example, will be growing, especially smaller ones, will be growing at the junction of the ground and the bottom of a large rock or a boulder. So underneath those rocks and boulders, the ground actually keeps or stores a lot more humidity. It stays damper for longer. So all of its roots are actually underneath that rock. So it's still slowly absorbing some water when the other more exposed ground around it will dry out much more quickly, things like that. So you can really notice that a lot of them are sort of growing in those kind of locations, and they're also pointing north as well. So at the top or the crown of the plant will be slightly leaning north, because we're in the southern hemisphere here. It's leaning towards the equator, towards the sun. And then in the United States, for example, they're leaning towards the south to the equator, because you're up in the northern hemisphere. And there's all these little details like that you start to notice. And and they develop little hairs on them a lot of the time as well. So you've got the spines coming out, but at the base of the spines, you've got these tiny little hairs called trichomes, and you get a lot of fog along these coastal areas. And so the fog kind of condensates on those trichomes and runs down to the base of the cactus, and the roots are really superficial, close to the top of the ground. So they just, soak it up. So they don't always need rain to get water. They get it through fog and other mechanisms like that.
Well, does the size of the cactus really kind of show that there's maybe more water in that area? I feel like you can get two of the same breed of cactus. And if you find one that looks a little bit more swollen or puffy, it's probably because it's the one that's sucking up the most nutrients compared to one that might be closer by, that's skinnier.
Right. Yeah. So generally speaking, but there's always things that break the rules, of course. But just for example, here in Chile again, you've got the Andes on one side of the country, and then you've got the coastal mountain range on the other. So the Andes gets a lot more moisture, a lot more rain than the coast, and so you get these really massive, big, tall, 8-meter cacti giants. And then along the coastline, you've generally got smaller, round ones, like small barrel cacti. So that kind of indicates where the more rain that arrives in the Andes, you get taller cacti. Along the coast, less rain, smaller cacti, basically. Yeah.
Now, what exactly juice is inside of a cactus? Is that true? Because I've heard so many people say you can drink the juice of a cactus. Nacho Libre is mostly where I'm getting a lot of my information from and a lot of my facts. So people cannot yell at me about Wikipedia, but is there an actual juice in there?
You get this. So apart from all the cells, it's mostly just cells, but in between the cells, you've got this substance called mucilage. It kind of sounds a bit like mucus, and it's kind of true. Anyone who's worked with cacti or taken a cutting will know that if you cut it open, you kind of get this goop sometimes, that's kind of has that mucus consistency to it. Sounds kind of gross, but actually this is kind of like a liquid, really, and that's also water storage tissue. But in terms of actually drinking it, you would probably have to put it into a blender and blend it up so it was actual more having a liquid consistency to it. So it's not like you'd imagine where you just like cut it in half, tip it back, and just, you know, pour the water out. But yeah, the water is stored in these tissues, but it's really, I mean, they're succulent, you know, so anything that's succulent is kind of like juicy. So you could, you know, you could eat it actually quite easily if you wanted to, if you cut it open and
have you ever ate a cactus?
Scooped it out. I have eaten some Apontia cactus. Yeah, some of the prickly pear cactus that I mentioned before. I've eaten some of that. And cactus fruits as well. Some of them have a really large fruit, and people might have heard of dragon fruit before. That's like actually a common fruit that you find in even Western supermarkets, and that comes from a cactus.
I remember I was watching The Dumbest Deaths in History. It was like this YouTube channel or some show, and one person was killed by a cactus. Some guy in like 1982 was shooting a cactus for fun, and he went to go poke it to make it fall over, and one of the arms that weighed 500 pounds fell on top of him and killed him.
Right. No, it's true. I'm sure there's been more than one event, to be honest, you know.
They look light as hell, and you can think that one of their arms is 500 pounds. Like, holy shit.
They do. You know, they do look light, but then anyone who, again, has worked with cacti and especially building landscape gardens or moving mature plants will know that it's really no joke when you move a cactus. You know, I've seen some pictures in Arizona when they've been transplanting some of those big, tall saguaro cacti, you know, and you've got like trucks, forklift cranes, you know, like and you know, if it does fall on you, it'll crush you, you know. You're talking like, sorry, I'm talking in kilograms, I'm using the metric system.
Well, shit, it's like trying to push over a vending machine to get your Funyuns out or something. It has that warning sticker. It's seriously, like it will fall on you.
yeah, and it's not just that, but the spines, you know, I mean, God, some of them can even be like a few feet long, like no joke, you know.
Now, the spines are technically considered leaves, but we call them spines because of their function. It's because they keep animals and predators away from them.
Right. So yeah, it's basically a modified leaf, basically. And it grows just like any other leaf. It grows from the base of the areole of the cactus, and well, when they're growing, they're alive, you know, but then a few years later they die. So, you know, mature spines in a cactus are actually all dead, but the ones that are growing from the growing point or the crown of the cactus are alive. Yeah.
How do you typically take people onto their tours of just the area? Like, what do you typically show them first? Like, if I'm going on a tour right now, I just bought my ticket and I'm going to sit down and we're going to ride around. What exactly, like, how are you going to show me a really good time besides taking me to the nearest strip club?
So, you know, I think, you know, the tours are really designed for nature lovers, but I think anyone could appreciate it, but it's certain ones are really for the obsessed, you know. So yeah, cacti usually grow in really amazing picturesque locations. You know, they love growing in mountains. They love growing in crazy coastal desert landscapes.
We call those Instagram moments.
They're such a photogenic plant because of, you know, usually where they grow. So basically having really in-depth conversations, and I try to really get people to notice more about what they're actually looking at rather than just saying, oh wow, you know, it's a great like landscape or an awesome looking plant. But most people who come on the tours already have, you know, quite a bit of knowledge about the plants. Not to say that you need to be an expert to come, but that's part of it too, is just really getting people to stand back and have a look and thinking about the interaction between the plants and the environment.
Well, you'll end up finding out that, like, you probably have noticed that people are more interested, like you were saying, about kind of like showing them what they should be looking at. More people are looking at what's around the cactus rather than the actual cactus themselves. You know, there's very few of them that stick out, but when they don't have a flower onto it, there's nothing that's super eye-catchy about it. You might look past it, look at the water in the background, look at the rocks around it, look at all these other things around it. It's like, look what you're staring at. Like, if you visually get up close to it, notice so many different features.
And this is one thing, you know, because I've done quite a lot of traveling beforehand. You know, you'll go on some tour and it'll all be very fast. You know, you'll stop at a place, you'll stop there for 5 to 10 minutes, take a photo, bang, move on to the next place. We go to a heap of places, but I really try and slow it down. You know, it's not about just getting out, taking a photo and tearing off to the next place. It's really about engaging with that environment. So kind of bringing in a bit of a mindfulness side of it, I guess. And getting people to really appreciate what they're actually looking at, and yeah, it just activates, I think, another part of the brain. You really start to, you feel like it's a more fulfilling experience if you do that, if you take the time. And
what are the typical questions you usually get about cactuses? Besides the basic stuff I've asked you.
Right. So people who grow them at home are really interested about habitat, because some plants are really difficult to grow in cultivation in people's homes. So they really like to know what they can do to, help that cactus or imitate or mimic its environment that it's adapted to over millions of years, and that really is valuable information for somebody. And you can't always get that information at home. Sometimes the only way to get that is to come to a habitat and see it in context, and say, oh, this is the kind of soil I should be using, or I'm giving it too much light or too much shade, or, all of those kind of things, So yeah, I think people come for different reasons, because I've done a few tours so far, and some people they actually had a cactus and succulent nursery. And so they were really interested in all that kind of information, whereas other people were just more interested in kind of, just more general stuff, but also noticing the interaction between the cactus and the environment. Yeah. But soil type is a huge thing, for anyone who's really interested in growing plants. Yeah.
Well, when it comes to like growing them in their house, like I mean, from what I've seen, you can pick up one at Walmart for like $6 and then grow it in your house. But I'm like, how the hell do you keep it alive? Do you just not touch it? Like, I feel like if I watered it, it would end up dying. And I feel like if I just left it alone, how does a plant survive like that?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistakes that people make are giving them too much water and not enough light. So, unless a cactus is really right against your windowsill, receiving light for probably at least half, like direct light for at least half of the day, it's probably not meeting its light requirements, And also, overwatering, a huge one. You should never really sit a cactus on like a plate or anything that helps to hold the water. They like to have the water drain away quickly, and that can be a problem for some people. Of course, if you've got a plant on your windowsill and you just water it, water comes out the bottom, so does dirt. It's messy, so people just put a plate under there. But if it's sitting in water for a day or two, that can cause rot problems pretty quickly.
All right. What's your most memorable experience on a tour? Like, whether it was a certain thing that you found, a certain kind of moment. Like, we all have those moments that kind of stick out into our heads. I mean, for me, when I was going into Nevada, we had a really funny bus driver that made the trip, dude. We're on this double-decker bus, and all you're seeing is cactuses and sand for hours and hours and hours. You really want something interesting to pop out and grab your view. And the guy goes, if you look around, everybody, you're going to notice some interesting things. Sand and nothing but cactuses for 2 hours. So enjoy the trip of looking at that. And it was so funny. He would crack jokes all the time. He goes, and there was one called the Joshua Tree or something. A certain
Joshua Tree National Park. Yeah.
It was way too, like, he was talking about classifications. Like, they call this I think it was a type of cactus he was talking about. It was called like a Joshua or something, where it had this whole story behind it, like, and then he cracked a joke afterwards. I wish I could remember what it was. His name was DeWade, but dude, he was the funniest. He made that experience for us. Like, do you try and do that when you're going on your tours? Do you try and make it fun for people, because they are interested? I mean, it is a learning process to them too. You want to make sure they have a good experience.
Right. So I think always helping bringing in some of like the cultural aspects of the place that you're traveling in, because we're in Chile. People are coming to South America. There's heaps of interesting stuff outside of just cacti here as well. So yeah, of course you get a bit of a cultural trip, but you try and explain maybe some of the uses of cacti that people have used in the past and even into the present, and things like that. So yeah, I think that's always really big selling point as well. Yeah.
I had to fact check this. So the Joshua tree, I was kind of right, and hitting it the same thing. It grows fiercely adverse conditions, seen by you two as a symbol of faith and hope in the midst of aridity. I don't even know how to pronounce that word, so if someone wants to dictionary read that one up, they can.
Right.
But it said the tree was named by early Mormon settlers after the Old Testament prophet Joshua, as its branches reminded them of Joshua raising his arms to pray.
Okay, right. I didn't realize that.
So the upside down L and the right side up L actually looks like a person praying. And that's why every time you see a cartoon and someone's hiding behind it, they do that. So bam,
Ugh.
I just solved my childhood. Now where's the quicksand? Because apparently that's a big issue too.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, well, there's always a story, behind a common name for a plant as well. So, I think teaching people about that and discussing that is also really interesting as well, like you've just demonstrated. Yeah.
Now, what's the most common cactus you probably come across? Certain type?
Oh,
I'm guessing it'd
in
probably be
people's collections?
well, no, just the one out in general, out in the desert. I'm guessing you're probably coming across like golden barrel cactuses, those giant round ones that look like fat like bowling balls.
So yeah, with cacti, like certain species, especially like that one, are endemic to certain areas. So that's a Mexican cactus, but it's not something that you would see all across Mexico. For example, you'd have to go to a certain specific area to find it. So yeah, everywhere you go, you see different species and different genus of cactus, which is one thing that I find amazing about it too, and which motivates me to keep traveling to different places, because you can't just go to one country and see them all. Yeah, so that's a pretty broad answer, isn't it? But yeah, I think the more you travel, the more different species you're going to see, which is, yeah.
Now, with the cactus tour,
Cool.
do you own the cactus kind of touring, or are you just part of it?
So what I'm doing is my own endeavor. So I'm really just focusing on doing tours in Chile. I know there are some other naturalist companies out there that do other things with that involve more countries and things like that. But right now, because I'm actually living in Chile, I'm just focusing on, the Chilean cacti here. And there's actually an Australian guy who's been over to Chile, I don't know, 11 or 12 times, and he's written a couple of books on the cacti of Chile, Copiopoa specifically, one genus. And so I'm working on actually writing another book too. So that's why I'm spending so much time here, is I'm really getting involved in it, taking a lot of field notes, a lot of photography. And so why not do tours as well and share the experience with some people along the way?
Well, even when you're writing down notes and kind of being able to classify them too. I've talked to a few people that do like entomology and stuff and bringing on a classification, such as like certain tools to help describe certain features of a cat or a insect.
Taxonomy.
Well,
Yeah.
when you're describing like kind of classifying and making notes on a cactus as well, what do you typically try and write down? Do you try and write down like certain things that stand out in your mind, such as the look of it or the texture, maybe the certain amount of petals or kind of flowers that are on it in general?
Yeah, well, when you look at a description for a cactus, it's got all kinds of different information, but some of the really defining characteristics are usually the size of the plant, for one, whether it's columnar or like globular, like round, even down to the details of the spines, how many spines per areole, the point where they come out of, how are they arranged, how many lateral ones, how many central ones, the ribs on the cactus. Really, really fine details. Even the root system, does it have a taproot, or is it just vesicular? Is it just, spreading out everywhere? And then the flowers are probably, well, they're a really, really major one too. So a lot of cacti from the same genus have got a similar type of anatomy to the flower, if you will. So yeah, there's a lot of different characteristics to consider, and it can take you a while to even notice the differences, I guess. Yeah, when you really look at the details.
How
Yeah.
often do you end up getting yourself pricked by a cactus? I feel like you're being around them all the time. Like I've stepped on Legos before, but I feel like stepping on a cactus is a whole different scenario.
Yeah, I think it's happening less and less, but it's something that happens. As long as you spend around them, I think it'll always be an occupational hazard of the of being a cacti obsessive. Yeah.
Now, are you out there looking for your own cactus to kind of name? It seems like a lot of them have very, very fancy names. If you found a cactus, what would you name it?
That's actually a really interesting question. I've been, thinking or wondering that because there is always going to be.
Thank you. Everyone gives me that answer like, I don't know, it'd just be cool to discover a new cactus species or a new species. It's like, what would you name it? You've thought of it. Everyone has. If I found a cactus, I'd call it like something badass. I would give it like prickle prime or something, like where it's like it's a double entendre. It has two meanings. It's meant to jab you, and it's also meant to look cool.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, you have to keep like the genus. You have to keep that in place, but the species name you can kind of sort of do what you want. Really, I mean, there's a lot of Latin and Greek that's been involved in naming plants, but usually you pick something about a characteristic of the plant, and you sort of might look for a Latin word that mimics that, or translates that, I should say. But a lot of cacti actually have the name of a place or the surname of the person who found it, So I don't know, you might call it Copiapoa burgensis or something like that. I don't know.
That'd be dope.
But yeah,
you have two opportunities here, man. You have one, you open up a burger shop and you make it in the shape of a cactus. Two, you open up a boxing gym and then instead of using punching bags, you just have cactus set up so people are trained. I would train there. Are you kidding me? You know how tough you would be if you were just going 9 rounds with something that weighs like almost a ton?
You're right. Yeah, but no, I've definitely thought of that. Yeah.
Well, where do you want to end up taking this endeavor? Do you want to end up making your own tour business, like furthering it out, maybe going and exploring different locations where cactuses are? Because they talk about there's over like, I think 1,750 species of cacti. And they say like
Right.
a large amount of those is in the Americas. So
Right. Yeah.
are you trying to explore out from Chile a little bit and go somewhere where it might be more, I guess, there?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Well, I've already been to Peru, some parts of Bolivia and Argentina, but yeah, Brazil is somewhere I'd really like to go. But yeah, I'm really wanting to go all through the Americas, but I might try to expand out to a few more countries, but Chile is really my specialty at the moment. But yeah, cacti are just endemic to the Americas. There's like maybe one species, I think, or two that are actually over in on the Indian side of the world somewhere. Yeah, Ripsalis, I think, is the genus. Yeah, but they're really just all endemic to the Americas. So yeah, I would love to work my way basically from southern Chile or Argentina all the way up to Canada, where they grow up to. It's crazy. People probably don't think there's cacti in Canada, but there is in the southern
Yeah, I immediately
part.
think of just like cold stuff. I never thought that there would be cactus growing there.
Oh yeah, there's some that are even growing down in Patagonia in Chile in the northern part. So yeah, well, a lot of cacti can really tolerate freezing, well below freezing temperatures, which is a mind boggler for a lot of people. And even rainforest conditions, a lot in tropical conditions too, because most people associate a cactus with the desert, of course, but if you only go looking in the desert, you'll probably miss over half of the species, actually.
I never knew that, man.
It's crazy. Yeah, you even get cacti which are classed as epiphytes, which mean they grow up in tree canopies and stuff like that. So a lot of people have heard of the zygo cactus or the Christmas cactus, and that's actually an epiphyte. It usually grows up in the branches of trees up in the canopy.
Well,
So,
you had a picture of one that was like the size of a quarter. And I'm like, you know how
right.
so easy that is to miss when you're walking around? Like, first of all, like, I don't think anybody really understands if you're near a desert or something, all those rocks, they completely like imagine a crowd of people and you're looking for one specific person. It is so hard to focus in on that one person when everything is moving around it at once. Like,
Right.
that's what it is trying to discover a cactus that's not like huge. That's not like one of those giant person like cactuses. If you're looking at like a little one with a beautiful flower on it, you can easily miss it with all the giant boulders and rock formations.
Right, exactly. And so that's the really crazy, incredible thing, is there's some cacti that I've gone looking for, and if someone hadn't already discovered it and given some description of its habitat or location where it grows, you just wouldn't find it, and that's the thing. You start to realize and have a lot more respect for a lot of botanists who have gone exploring and discovering stuff. And just realizing what they actually did to discover that in the first place, you know, like just literally walking around the desert. A lot of people might think it's crazy, but yeah, it's really quite a profound experience, you know, and I think it teaches you patience is one really big thing that's taught me, you know. When I first came over to Chile, I was expecting to just go around and see everything on one trip, but months later I was really having just to slow it down because, you know, there's just so much
there's so much information to intake at once. Is probably what your kind of customers see too. Like when they're going on a tour or something, like, what do you mean we didn't see everything? It's like, how can I show you everything? Like, there's no way.
Exactly. It's impossible.
I've been here for years studying cactuses, and I feel like I've scratched the surface.
That's so true. That's exactly how it is. Like, you know, you really have to, if you really want to see a really decent amount of stuff, you really have to commit yourself to it, you know.
What's your worst experience you've ever had on a trip?
Oh my God. Well,
if it's a person, you don't have to say the name, but I want to know exactly, because I'm telling you, if I was on that trip, you bet your ass I would be going off on my own trying to find every single cactus. You'd be like, Rob, put that down. I'm like, it looks tasty.
So you mean like things that have happened to me on a trip, or like when I've actually had a tour? Because I mean, there's kind of a bit of both, you know. Some things have happened on tour, but heaps that have happened off. Wow. I mean, I've been stuck in some crazy places, even in 4-wheel drive, you know. I've gone up, you know, a really dodgy trail, up a really steep incline up a mountain, you know, and had to reverse down and then sort of jackknifed the vehicle and had to get you know, assistance crews to come in and actually realign the vehicle and, you know, stuff like that, so you don't roll it down the side of a mountain, you know, things like this. I don't know. You just end up really pushing the limits sometimes to get to certain places, you know, and that can sort of make you come unstuck, you know. And just anything that involves vehicles, you know, Murphy's Law, if it can go wrong, it will. The amount of breakdowns I've had.
Well, even worrying about the vehicle too, you also got to keep into the mind of, you got to make sure that people stay hydrated as well. I mean, you're out there in terrible climates. People are sitting there like, I got a bottle of water. It's like, where's your other bits of water? What do you mean? I barely drink water as it is. It's like, you're going to die out here.
My God, that was a classic, you know. I did have a small group, and, you know, one person, for example, was just drinking coffee. And I was just like,
what?
You know, do you want some water? And he's like, no, I've got my pot of coffee. I'm good. And I'm like, I didn't know how he was doing it. I'm like, are you sure you're okay? You don't have a headache? You're not like lightheaded? No, I'm fine. I just got my pot of coffee. And just for the day, it was basically a pot of coffee. And I think he had maybe one small, like, you know, bottle of water.
I didn't think Starbucks could save you from the Sahara.
And here I am, I've got my like gallons of water, you know, like, I mean, I've got my 6.5 liter big, you know, big bottle of water, and I'm just like guzzling it down. I drink so much water, you know. On a day out in the desert, it wouldn't be a stretch if I drank like 5 liters of water. I don't know how much.
I just want to see the difference between people in their first time going and then their second time going. Their first time going, I don't need sunscreen. Second time, they're covered up like a freaking pale ghost or whatever, covered in sunscreen with like a giant sun hat on. Like, I realized the sun is not as helpful as we think it is.
That happened on the second tour I did, when we actually went to the Altiplano. So in the high elevations here in the Andes, the UV radiation is just, it's actually, I think it's the highest in the world, or one of the highest ratings in the world you get here in the Andes. And so, yeah, you know, he's like, look, you really need to put on sunscreen, like, you know, a few times a day. You need to wear your hat. You need to wear long sleeves. Yeah. You know, I've been out in the sun before. One day later, like blistered skin, you know, like, you were right about the sun. You know. And so I think people can get kind of complacent or think that it's like it is where at home, you know, in the on the other side of the world. But then you come down to different environments that you're not used to or you don't know about, you learn pretty quickly, I think.
What types of things do you find that people usually are afraid of with cactuses, besides maybe they're looking at everything? Like, what type of stigmas do you try and break to people and show them that it's really not this thing that's pent up to make it believe what they think it is?
Right. just having to think. I know that there's one that I came across, but I just can't remember what it was now.
I mean, we look at
Um,
these things like monsters practically. For a lot of people, they just seem like more of a hassle to get near than, to even bother looking at. Like, we can take a picture
right,
from a distance, but going up close was always something scary. And it's like they relate a lot to people in a way. I mean, having that weird kind of sharp exterior, but holding a lot of information inside of it. I mean, if you look at people that make it out of places that are, have terrible environments, but they grow up to be something like crazy and amazing, it's like,
right,
whoa, that's the same thing with a cactus. It's literally that. They grow in the
right.
harshest climates and they grow to be something amazing.
I think it's really anything that someone hasn't noticed before. You can, if you explain some more detail about the anatomy or physiology of a cactus or the biochemistry of it or whatever, something that they didn't know, then they start to appreciate it more. But you just need to break that kind of idea that it's just a cactus, or it's like, yeah, if you can explain to them something about its evolution or its story of survival, especially something that they might be able to relate to.
Or its
Um,
benefits too. Like, I know a lot of
yeah, right.
that lot of juice and stuff in there has been told in many
Well,
folklore stories. First of all, have been keeping people on the brink of death from dying, like.
right, exactly. So if you bring that into it, I think that starts to broaden people's minds. And I mean, in Peru, for example, there are many species of cacti that have been used for, probably millennia. I don't know. And yeah, people harvesting the fruit to survive, just as any other kind of fruit,
Using it as medicine as well for being able to heal
Oh,
wounds and certain things.
yeah, exactly. I mean, well, aloe vera, which is not a cactus, it's a succulent, but yeah, there's many instances like, yeah, where they've been used as part of the culture, and yeah, any kind of uses for humans, and then you've got, of course, got the San Pedro cactus or Echinopsis pachanoi, I think is the name, and then you've got the other peyote cactus that you get up in Mexico and in Texas and stuff like that, Arizona, I should say. So yeah, hallucinogenic type cacti.
To a spiritual thing, just make sure you don't hug the cactus, because it is not an alien from a third dimension. That is a cactus. You're tripping your balls off. That's all I have to
say. Yeah, I've never done it, but yeah, definitely know people who have. So,
well, I really appreciate you coming out and doing the podcast, Stefan. I kind of want to give you here a minute at the end to be able to promote your content and maybe say some things to some people out there that maybe want to end up trying to look at maybe learning a little bit more about cacti. I mean, it's cacti,
okay.
technically, it's plural.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess anyone who's interested in my content, my social media handles at Cacti Explorer on Instagram and Facebook, and I've also got a website now, www.cactiexplorer.com. So you can learn a little bit more about me there, and there's also links to some other interviews and yeah, a heap of information about the tours that I do just here in Chile. So I offer 3 different tours, but basically 2 are just of the Chilean coastline and 1 is of the Andes or the Altiplano here in Chile. So yeah, the Altiplano is really a photographer's paradise. It's not just focused on cacti. We go to places like the Red Lagoon and eat typical Andean cuisine. But yeah, the Chilean
lagoon is that's like a sea that's basically all red.
Right, it's just kind of like this like lagoon lake. It's a geothermal place, so it gets its water actually coming up from subterranean sources, and it's got a very high mineral salt content, and so the water itself is actually clear, but you get this archaea is the name, so it's kind of like bacteria, but it's actually different in a different domain, and it's actually growing on the rocks and on the base of the lagoon, and that's actually what gives it its color. So yeah, it's a really special place.
Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank podcast, and stay tuned for our next episode.